What's going on, everybody? Mr. Octagon. We are back here with the 3 Minutes on the Clock podcast, Season 2, Episode number 6 of the series. We have my 5th NFL mock draft, and remember, this mock is what I am predicting will happen. Not what I think should happen, but what I think will happen. And if you want to see mock drafts of what I think should happen, make sure to go join my Discord server, link in the description below. So don't get mad at me with some of these picks because I might not personally agree with all of them. This is just me trying to predict the future. Also, I usually do mock drafts every 2 weeks, but with the combine being next weekend, I figured that would be an awkward time to do it. I know I just did a mock last week, but I figured it makes more sense to do a pre-combine mock and then a post-combine mock rather than one right in the middle of the scouting combine, which is late this coming week, the weekend, and then the early part of next week. I will have an official combine preview video probably on Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, and then I'll have a combine recap video probably Tuesday or Wednesday of the following week. And then, as I mentioned, mock draft today and then mock draft in 2 weeks. Also, today's mock is only going to be 2 rounds. That's because I sort of did this last minute. I was planning on doing an NBA mock draft today, but I changed my mind last second, and we are also adding trades in this mock draft. My first mock this season with trades. I made a little color-coded trade key here because I highlighted all the picks involving trades different colors. So if the pick is highlighted in blue, that means the team traded up. If it's in green, that means they traded down. If it's in yellow, that means they traded for a player. And if it's purple, that means they traded away a player for a pick. And I'll have the official trade on the bottom part of the graphic. I know it sounds confusing, but you'll see in just a second what I mean. The top 2 picks are fairly obvious. Joe Burrow and Chase Young at number 1 and 2, respectively, to the Bengals and Redskins. These selections have not changed since my first mock back in January, and I do not expect them to change until we hit the NFL draft, which is in just about 2 months. So I'm not really going to go in depth about these two because I already have and the fit with the team. But I want to briefly bring up something with Joe Burrow real quick. And there have been rumors this week about him not wanting to play in Cincinnati. He said he has the leverage with the selection. And I think these rumors are BS. I think it's kind of a lazy take for people to really not think he wants to play in Cincinnati. It's lazy. Just because the Bengals have been bad doesn't mean Burrow does not want to play there. Kyler Murray got drafted by a bad Cardinals team last year, but he was more than fine with playing there, and obviously he was very good as a rookie. I understand Eli Manning did it, I understand John Elway did it, but I don't think Burrow will. The Bengals have great offensive pieces. I'm not saying their offense is great or anything, but they have some really solid pieces. Joe Mixon is the top 10 running back. I think there's a decent chance A.J. Green is brought back. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but I would not be surprised if they re-sign A.J. Green. I understand he's not the player he once was, but he's still a good receiver. Tyler Boyd's very solid. Auden Tate was good last year. John Ross, I know he's a little bit of a wild card, has had trouble staying on the field, and even when he is on the field, he hasn't been super productive. But last year, he showed a ton of flashes in why the Bengals picked him so high. The offensive line has a few young pieces. Jonah Williams will be back. Billy Price needs to develop a little bit. Trey Hopkins has been a diamond in the rough. So it's not like the Bengals have bad offensive pieces on their roster. They just need a quarterback who could really come in there and lead them. And I think that can be Joe Burrow, who is an Ohio kid. I mean, he's from Ohio. I don't know why he wouldn't want to play in Cincinnati. It's not like this team has been known as an awful organization. I understand they've never been known as a good one. But, I mean, they have a decent history. They've made Super Bowls. They've made the playoffs a lot in this decade. I understood they've lost every playoff game they've been in, but that's because of poor coaching and poor discipline. But Marvin Lewis is gone. Guys like Vontaze Burfict and Adam Jones are gone. This is a new Bengals team, and I'm sure Burrow would love to play for Cincinnati. And then Chase Young, this is another obvious pick. Redskins could always look to trade if a team like the Dolphins wants to move up, if they're legitimately scared of the Lions picking Tua. But I doubt that. I think the Redskins will stay here and pick Chase. So at number 3, we've got ourselves a trade. The Miami Dolphins will be moving up The Lions will be receiving the 5th pick, the 39th pick, and the 56th pick. So the Dolphins will not be trading any additional first-round picks in this deal. And I think it's a fair trade for both sides. Remember back in 2018 when the Jets moved up for Sam Darnold? They traded up from pick 6 to 3. The Colts obviously got pick 6, and they received 3 second-rounders. So I think for the Lions to move down 2 spots, I think 2 second-rounders is fair, especially since they're both this year. Maybe the Lions could get a little bit more, but I don't think this is a bad trade for Detroit by any means. I'm a Lions fan. I think if there are no better offers, they should do that deal in a heartbeat. And meanwhile, for the Dolphins, I'm sure they want Tua. They've been coveting him for years. They do not have to trade a first-round pick other than pick 5, obviously, in this deal. And I think they would be more than happy to do it. Every single mock draft so far, we've had Tua Tagovailoa going to the Dolphins. This one, no different. I don't think Tua's really going to play a lot as a rookie, coming off the hip injury. And Fitzpatrick is a serviceable starter for another season. I think Tua might have the highest ceiling out of any QB in this draft, but I think this is a very risky pick. I don't think he has the dominant athletic traits to ever really make him a superstar. Plus, with the injury concerns, I would not make this move if I was the Dolphins, but if they're really sold on him, go ahead. With the 4th pick, the Giants are going to get Isaiah Simmons. I should not make him listed as a linebacker in this graphic because he's not a linebacker. He is a versatile freak. He can play almost anywhere on the defense. You can put him at slot corner, safety, off-ball linebacker, even as an edge rusher every once in a while. I predict he'll probably be an in-the-box type linebacker, sort of like Derwin James in a way. I don't think he'll be used quite like Derwin James. I think there's a chance he'll be better than Derwin James, which says a lot because I think Derwin is extremely underrated. But this would be a phenomenal pick for the Giants. Simmons is my number 2 player in the draft. He's going to put up scary numbers next week at the Combine. I cannot wait to see what type of athletic numbers he ends up doing. He's going to run a really good 40 time. He's going to have really good vert and broad jump. I think his agility drills are going to be good. I think the on-field drills are going to be good. I think he's just going to do it all. And I think while the Giants could look a line here, maybe even receiver, I think this is the pick to make here, and I think this will be a massive win for the Giants. Pick 5, the Lions get Jeff Okudah, cornerback, Ohio State. So the guy that they probably would have picked at 3, they're going to get here at 5, and due to their patience, they're going to get an additional pair of second-round picks. My gut is telling me Darius Slay does not get moved. My gut is really starting to tell me that we're going to pay him. I just hope we don't overpay him. I don't want to do 4 years like $70 million. I think that'd be a bad move for us. But if it's 3 years, maybe $50 million, I'd be on board with doing that. And even if we do bring him back, I think another corner is probably needed. Justin Coleman is fine. Amari Oruwariye has a ton of potential, in my opinion. But even so, I think another one alongside Darius Slay could be needed. And adding a guy like Jeff Okudah, who I think will be great right off the jump. This Lions secondary, along with Tracy Walker and Will Harris as the safeties, that's easily a top 5 secondary in the NFL as long as the Lions can build up a better pass rush. Some of the linebackers can develop. Jelani Tavai takes a step up. Maybe we move Jared Davis to edge. I think this defense can be a lot improved with just a few small moves. At pick 6, Justin Herbert, quarterback, Oregon to the Chargers. In my last mock, for the first time, I did not have the Chargers getting Herbert. I had them going with Mekhi Becton. Herbert fell to 13, where the Colts ended up picking him. But now I have him going back to the Chargers at 6. With Phillip Rivers gone, they obviously need a quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if they sign a guy like Teddy Bridgewater or Jameis Winston. But even so, do you really think those guys are your future? And I guess if the Chargers were to go after one of them, they probably would not pick a quarterback here. They'd probably wait till the 2nd or 3rd round to get a guy like Jake Fromm or Jacob Eason. But even so, Justin Herbert has more upside than probably anyone in free agency that the Chargers can realistically get. And I think Herbert would be a very nice pick here. He is my QB2. It's not that I'm in love with Herbert. It's that there's no one else in this class worthy of being the QB2 in my opinion. But I do think this would be a good move for the Chargers. Pick 7, Panthers get Derek Brown, defensive tackle, out of Auburn. That's the pick I had for the Panthers in my last mock. They need some guys in the middle of that defensive line, and Brown might be the safest player in this entire draft class. I mean, he is super, super productive. I don't think he has a crazy ceiling, but I think he'll be a good run stuffer, a good occasional pass rusher, and I think this would be a pretty good pick for Carolina, getting who would be the best available player on most boards. And then pick 8, Mekhi Becton, offensive tackle, Louisville to the Chargers. Can't wait to see his measurables at the Combine. He moves extremely well for someone his size. I think the only issue with him is controlling his weight. He's a big guy. He's like 6'7", maybe close to 370. I know, this dude is an absolute mammoth. And he moves so well. He had such a good year at Louisville. He's probably, in my opinion, I think he's probably the best tackle prospect in the draft class. I know a lot of people would disagree. Some would say Jedrick Wills. Some would say Andrew Thomas. Maybe even some would say Tristan Wirfs. And I think all three of those guys are great. But I'm just a big Mekhi Becton fan. I think this kid is an absolute stud. Next up, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars here at 9. I have them going with Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle, South Carolina. I think he has a higher ceiling than Derek Brown. He has a lower floor, but I think Kinlaw is going to test really, really well at the Combine, cementing himself as a top 10 pick. I think he has the chance to be a better pass rusher than Derek Brown, and the Jaguars need some guys in the middle of that defensive line. Calais Campbell isn't getting any younger. Taven Bryan hasn't really developed the way Jacksonville was hoping quite yet, and I think this would be a nice pick for Jacksonville. So as you can see, picks 1 through 9, most of these picks are the same from last week's mock. The only differences being Tua and Okudah technically swapped, Herbert at 6, and then Mekhi Becton at 8. So pretty much the same. And now we have a big trade here, and this is where the domino effect comes in. One change, and this whole draft is going to be different from last week's mock. I had the Browns moving down to pick 21. It's the Philadelphia Eagles who are moving up. I had the Browns acquiring in this deal pick 21, pick 53, and a 2021 first-round pick in exchange for this 10th selection. So the Eagles are giving up a gigantic haul to move up. That's a lot of draft capital the Eagles are giving up. Probably a little bit too much, but they need a game-changing receiver, and they're going to get one. CeeDee Lamb out of Oklahoma. They had their choice here between Lamb and Jeudy. Maybe it's smart to wait until one of them goes and then trade up later, but I think CeeDee Lamb fits what they need more, a dynamic playmaker who can stretch the field. Jeudy is more of the safe pick, the better route runner, but I don't think he has the upside that CeeDee Lamb has, and CeeDee Lamb can be this team's Deshaun Jackson. Jackson looked really good last year in the one game he played before getting hurt. So now Deshaun Jackson, but younger, more healthy, and probably a little bit better if we're being honest. Pick 11, Andrew Thomas, offensive tackle, Georgia to the Jets. Some media outlets have been dropping Thomas to the mid-first round, and I've had him going later in these past couple mocks. I think my last one I had him going to Denver at 15. I've had him going to Miami at 18. But the more I think about it, the more I don't think that makes sense. I think Andrew Thomas is legit. The Jets have their choice here between him, Tristan Wirfs, and Jedrick Wills, but I think they're going to go Thomas, probably the safest of the bunch. I think he's going to be really, really good right off the jump, and the Jets need to get a franchise left tackle for Darnold, and I think that will be Andrew Thomas. Pick 12, Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver, Alabama to the Las Vegas Raiders. In my first 3 mocks, I had Jeudy going here, but in my last mock, with all the offensive tackles going in the top 10, I had the Jets getting Jerry Jeudy at 11, and the Raiders had to pick Patrick Queen at 12. But now that Jerry Jeudy's on the board, I still think he is going to be the selection. I don't think Judy's going to test out of this world at the Combine. I don't think he has the ceiling of a guy like Julio Jones. But I think Jerry Jeudy will be phenomenal right off the jump. I think the Raiders are getting an 1,000-yard receiver day one. Jeudy has some of the best route running skills I've seen out of a receiver in a while coming out of college, and I think this would be a really, really good pick for Las Vegas, getting themselves a number 1 receiver for Derek Carr or whoever the future franchise quarterback will be. At pick 13, I have the Colts selecting Henry Ruggs, wide receiver, Alabama. They could look at a guy like Jordan Love here, but I'm going to have them going with Ruggs instead, the dynamic speedster. Probably the biggest question headed into the Combine, other than Tua's medical, is what is Henry Ruggs going to run? I think Daniel Jeremiah was the first to say this. He predicts that he does not know the third number of Henry Ruggs' 40-yard time, but he predicts the first two numbers will be a 4 and a 2. In other words, Henry Ruggs will run a sub 4.3. He is an absolute blazer. A lot of people think he is a legit shot to break John Ross's record at 4.22. Do I think so? Probably not, but he certainly is a shot. My over-under is probably 4.26 or so, but I wouldn't be surprised if he breaks it, but 4.22 is definitely a hard mark to beat. I don't really see Ruggs going any later than this, and if he does run like a 4.21, a 4.20, blaze it, there's a shot he could go before CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. I think considering the jump that John Ross had, he was supposed to be a late first rounder. He entered the top 10. Here's Henry Ruggs, a projected top 15 pick. I could easily see him sliding in the top 10 over a guy like CeeDee Lamb or Jerry Jeudy. Heck, maybe a team moves up for him. Maybe someone close to the top 5 picks him. I don't know. But this will be a really, really good selection here for Indy. Give themselves a true number 1 receiver as T.Y. Hilton's starting to get older. Didn't play super well last year. Did not play a lot last year due to injuries. Paris Campbell's there. He still has potential, but didn't do a lot as a rookie. And then Zach Pascal's solid, but nothing crazy. So I think this would be a good pick for Indy. Pick 14, Tristan Wirfs, offensive tackle, Iowa to the Bucks. I think they could use a franchise tackle. If I were to guess, I predict Jameis Winston will be back next year. Whether that's on a long deal or a franchise tag or a 1-year deal, I don't know. I mean, I don't see the Bucks paying him 5 years. I think they'd be kind of stupid to. I think at most you give him 2 years just because he's such a question mark. But regardless, they do need some help on the offensive line, specifically at tackle. They could look at Wirfs or Jedrick Wills. A lot of people would say Wills here, and that's fine. But I think Tristan Wirfs has a little bit more upside, and that's why I think the Bucks are going to pick him. Pick 15, here's Jedrick Wills, offensive tackle, Alabama to the Broncos. A lot of people think he's going top 5 at the latest, like 8 to the Cardinals. I think Wills is going to go a little bit lower than people expect, and I think he's a tad bit overhyped. I think Jedrick Wills is a phenomenal prospect, and I think this is great value at 15. Phenomenal in pass protection, was super productive this year at Alabama, probably the best tackle in college football last year, if we want to be honest, or at least the best tackle when it comes to production last year in this class. But even so, I don't think he has the versatility to really be great at left tackle. I think Wills is best at right tackle, and I don't think he's going to put up insane numbers at the combine. So that's why I have Becton, Thomas, and Wirfs going before him. But this is a great pick for Denver, and with the value, and tackle is a need on both sides, left and right, I think this does make sense. Now, they do have Jawan James, who is for right tackle. Garrett Bowles is for left. James is obviously better than Bowles. Garrett Bowles has been a disaster, but I think Jawan James potentially has the versatility to move over to the left side. I also think James has the athleticism and the versatility to be able to play guard. So I think that could work as well. Maybe move Dalton Reisner to center. You got Ron Leary as your left guard. And then all they need is a legit left tackle. And I guess they can start Bowles again if they want more holding calls and sacks allowed. And then pick 16. A little bit of a surprise here. I have the Falcons getting DeAndre Swift, running back, Georgia. A lot of the time, it's been an edge rusher going here. A.J. Epinesa, K'Lavon Chaisson, maybe a corner like Christian Fulton. But with Devontae Freeman getting cut, I think they could use a day 1 pick on a running back. In my past few mocks, I've been having them getting likely Jonathan Taylor or J.K. Dobbins in the second round. I still thought they were going to go with one regardless. But now that they're officially cutting Devontae Freeman, I think they want a game changer on this offense. And we've seen so many first-round running backs these past couple years really come in and really be great right away. And I think DeAndre Swift has the chance to do so. Of course, he played his college ball in Georgia, so I think the Falcons fans will certainly embrace him, even if he might not be their first choice in this scenario, since they'd probably rather go defense. Here at pick 17, the Cowboys have a pretty interesting choice. They could look at corner, they could look at safety, they could look at edge. But I've been going with K'Lavon Chaisson, the edge rusher out of LSU. Chason is, in my opinion, a clone of Brian Burns coming out of last year's class. Phenomenal pass rushers, going to test quite well at the combine, and coming off the rookie year that Burns had, I think this will be a really good pick for Dallas. Chason isn't the best run defender. He's had some good flashes here and there in the run game, but he's still rather inconsistent, and that's not his strength. But nonetheless, I think this could be a very nice compliment for DeMarcus Lawrence on the edge. They could look at a guy like Epinesa, but I think K'Lavon Chaisson has more of a ceiling as a pass rusher, whereas Epinesa is more all-around. Not quite as much potential as a dynamic pass rusher, but I think he's a little bit better as a run stopper, and I think he's a little bit more versatile, which leads us to our next pick. The Dolphins are going to pick A.J. Epinesa, the edge rusher from Iowa. You can put him inside. You can put him outside. I think he's going to test better than most people expect him to at the combine. Didn't put up the most sack numbers this year, but that's because of all the double teams he faced. I think he's going to be a pretty solid pass rusher in the NFL. I don't think he'll be anything crazy, but his versatility mixed with his ability to get to the quarterback and stop the run, I think this will be a nice pick for the Dolphins, who are in need of some edge rushers. Pick 19, Patrick Queen, linebacker, LSU to the Raiders. I had them getting Queen at 12 in my last mock. Here, he is still available at 19, and the Raiders will end up pulling the trigger. Queen flies over the field. He had an incredible playoff, really saw his stock rise towards the end of the season, and I think he has cemented himself as a top 20 selection. His length isn't the best, but I think he'll test well at the combine, and I think this will be a nice pick for the Raiders, who have not had a great linebacker in a long time. Pick 20, surprise here, Noah Igbenogany, cornerback from Auburn. Igbenogany as the second corner off the board. Hello. But yes, I have him going ahead of guys like Christian Fulton, C.J. Henderson, Jeff Gladney. That is because Igbenogany has really seen his stock skyrocket this past month or so. Had a great Senior Bowl. Currently, a lot of people have him as a second-round pick, but I think he's going to test really, really well at the combine. A lot of people don't view him as a freak, but I think he's going to test great at the combine. I think he'll test better than people expect. I think he's going to run a really fast 40. He can jump. I think his wide receiver abilities, he's played wide receiver in the past. I think his ball skills are a big part of what makes him great, and I think his receiving ability will help with some of his on-field drills and help with the agility drills. So that's why I think not only Igbenogany will go this early, but why I think it makes sense for him to go this early. And I think this is actually going to be a good pick for Jacksonville if they go this route. Pick 21, Austin Jackson, offensive tackle, USC to the Browns. Remember, this pick was from the Eagles, but since they moved up for CeeDee Lamb, this pick now goes to Cleveland. They could have had a guy like Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, or Tristan Wirfs, but I don't think Austin Jackson's a whole lot worse, and I think he's going to test well at the combine, and I think this would be really, really solid value here at 21. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes earlier. I think he would be highly regarded in most classes. It's just that this offensive tackle class is so top-heavy that Jackson is available here, and the Browns, who are in desperate need of offensive line help, will certainly pull the trigger. Pick 22, Laviska Shenault, wide receiver, Colorado to the Bills. They need a dynamic playmaker on the offense for Josh Allen. Devin Singletary is solid at running back. I don't think he's great. I think the Bills could use another. At receiver, they have some talent. Cole Beasley was a good signing. John Brown was also a good signing. Both of them played well last year at tight end. Got a few young pieces, most notably Dalton Knox, the rookie out of Ole Miss. I guess now the second-year man as we enter next season. But I think they need a number one receiver, and they could go with a number of guys here. I'd probably pick Jalen Reagor in this scenario. I'm a big Reagor guy. They could look at T. Higgins. Maybe even someone like Brandon Ayuk slips through the cracks and gets picked this early. But they're going to go with Shenault, who I think is also a very nice selection. He's a very dynamic playmaker. He'll test pretty well in Indy. And I think this is a very nice selection for the Bills' offense. Pick 23, Xavier McKinney, safety, Alabama. This is the same pick I had in my last mock. The last same pick I had was Kinlaw at 9. That's what one trade does to the entire draft, referring to the CeeDee Lamb trade for the Eagles. But McKinney, I think, is going to be really, really good. This safety class reminds me of the 2018 class, with Minkah Fitzpatrick and Derwin James. McKinney is your Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Grant Delpit is your Derwin James. Do I think McKinney and Delpit will be as good off the jump? Probably not. That's not saying a whole lot, considering Minkah and Derwin James are easily top 5 safeties in the NFL. And I think they're going to go with McKinney, who's more of a playmaker. He's a little bit more consistent than Delpit. I don't think he has the ceiling that Delpit has, but I think he's a little bit better in coverage. You can put him at slot corner, and with Devin McCourty being a free agent, this can be your McCourty replacement. McKinney has some similarities to Devin, and I think this pick makes sense for New England. They could look at quarterback. Jordan Love is still available, so this is prime Jordan Love territory. Maybe if they prefer a guy like Jake Fromm, they could always pick him here, but for now, I do think the pick will be McKinney. And then pick 24, Christian Fulton, cornerback, LSU to the Saints. A lot of Saints fans want a wide receiver here, and I don't blame them. Michael Thomas is a one-man show, and to be fair, he put up more numbers than most 1 and 2 receivers combined, but they still needed someone across from him. They could look at a guy like Justin Jefferson or T. Higgins or Jalen Reagor, KJ Hamler even. Brandon Ayuk is another option. However, since this is such a deep receiver class, you can always find guys later. And why not get corner? Corner is also deep in this class, but I think there's going to be a big run on corners probably in the second round. The Saints don't have a second round pick, so when they're up next, not a lot of great corners are going to be available. Whereas with wide receiver, I think there's just so many in this class, they'll still be able to choose between a ton of talent. So I think they're going to go with corner here. Fulton had a great year at LSU. They have options. They could go with a guy like C.J. Henderson, Jeff Gladney, Trayvon Diggs, Damon Arnett, Jalen Johnson, Bryce Hall, Cameron Dantzler. I told you this was a deep cornerback class. But they're going to go with Fulton, the Louisiana kid, or I guess the LSU kid, and keep him in Louisiana. Now into the final part of the first round, starting with the Vikings. I have them getting Ross Blacklock, defensive tackle from TCU. Blacklock missed the 2018 season with an injury, but he played super well last year. He played super well in 2017. And the Vikings, while they could look at corner here, I think there's still going to be a few options left in the late second. And I don't think this is as deep of a class when it comes to interior defensive linemen. So they're going to go with the ultra-productive Blacklock and really improve that front seven. Everson Griffin opted out of his contract. He's probably gone. Linval Joseph isn't getting a whole lot better. He's not getting any younger. And really on that defensive line, all they got is Daniil Hunter, who is great, super underrated. But I think they could use another player there, and they're going to go with Blacklock. At pick 26, the Dolphins, remember, they traded up. They gave up a pair of second-round picks along with pick 5 to get Tua. And I think they could use to get some draft capital back. Meanwhile, the Indianapolis Colts, they have been biting their chops these last few picks, but Jordan Love is still on the board. They do not know how Jordan Love is on the board, and they will capitalize. The Colts will be trading pick 34 and pick 70, so basically their early second-round pick they got from Washington in the Montez Sweat trade-up last year, and then their own third-round pick, I believe. That might actually be from another trade. I think 70 would be too high to be the Colts pick, but I don't remember what trade that was offhand. The Dolphins will be trading, this pick 26 and 153, which is their 5th round pick. And with this selection, the Colts will, as I mentioned, take Jordan Love. Love is a super high ceiling. He has all the physical traits. He has a cannon for an arm. He's mobile. He can, while he's good in the pocket, he can also be productive out of the pocket as well. He's very raw, and the Colts have Jacoby Brissett, who's a fine starter for a year. But Jordan Love, while he has a low floor, he has a ton of potential. Pick 27, Terrell Lewis, edge rusher, Alabama to the Seahawks. Not a lot of people are hyping him up for this combine, but I think he's going to put up really solid numbers and assert himself over guys like Yetur Gross-Matos, Curtis Weaver, Julian Okwara, and really set himself up to be a first-round selection. The Seahawks need edge badly. All they got is Jadeveon Clowney, and Clowney is a free agent. He might go. I don't think the Seahawks really want to pay Jadeveon Clowney 5 years, $100 million. That's about what I expect Clowney to get. I don't know if the Seahawks want to do that. It's not like they traded a lot to get him and feel like they have to re-sign him. So regardless of if Jadeveon Clowney stays or not, they need another edge rusher, and they're going to go with Lewis. Pick 28, Kenneth Murray, linebacker, Oklahoma, to the Ravens. This has been a very popular pick. I've had Murray going to the Ravens a lot these past couple of weeks, and considering Ravens fans have not come after my head yet, that means they like it. I had Murray going 19 towards the beginning of my mocks, but with Patrick Queen's assertion and him passing Kenneth Murray slides here to 28, and the Ravens, who are really looking for their C.J. Mosley replacement, can get one. Pick 29, Yetur Gross-Matos, edge rusher, Penn State to the Titans. I think they need someone else alongside Harold Landry, and I think that could be Gross-Matos. They had a few options. In my last mock, I had them getting Josh Uche, who I project will have a really good combine and move himself from a late second, early third to a late first, early second round guy. They could look at Curtis Weaver. They could look at Julian Okwara. But for now, I do have them going with Gross-Matos. Pick 30, T. Higgins, wide receiver, Clemson, to the Green Bay Packers. They need another wide receiver really, really badly. They have options. They could go with Rager, Ayuk. They could go with a guy like KJ Hamler. But for now, it is going to be T. Higgins, the big-bodied machine from Clemson. Has a lot of similarities to Kenny Golladay in play style. I don't think T. Higgins will be as good as Kenny Golladay, but I don't think he'll be too much worse. And I think him and Devontae Adams can be a really nice pairing. Pick 31, Grant Delpit, safety, LSU to the 49ers. I think they could use some help in the secondary, which is their one big weakness. The secondary did not play too bad in the Super Bowl, considering Mahomes was held to not really dominating until the fourth quarter. But you got to remember, a lot of that is because of the pass rush. The Niners have 4 legitimate Pro Bowl caliber pass rushers last year, and Dee Ford, Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, and DeForest Buckner. And with Armstead potentially leaving, while they could look at someone else to plug and play where Armstead was if he doesn't re-sign, I think they could also try to improve the secondary. Richard Sherman's getting older. They have a hole at cornerback as well. That could be the move, but I've been going with safety instead. They're not great at safety. Jaquiski Pop-Tart is solid, but I think they could use another guy. And Delpit, who was my number one player headed into the season, has dropped on a lot of people's boards, including mine. Not the greatest tackler, needs to be more consistent, but I think he has the highest upside out of any safety in this class. And then pick 32, Jeff Gladney, cornerback, TCU to the Chiefs. In every mock draft, I had Gladney going in the first round. That's not changing. I expect Jeff Gladney to do really well at the Combine. He will be a first-round pick. I've had the Chiefs going with running back pretty much every mock, but we're not going to do that here. They could look at a guy like J.K. Dobbins or Jonathan Taylor, but for now, I have them going with Gladney, one of my favorite prospects in this year's class. Good length, good athleticism, solid ball skills. He's scrappy, pretty physical, and I think this will be a really, really good pick for Kansas City. Now, one of the second round, Bengals going to start us off with Zach Baun, edge rusher from Wisconsin. The great thing about Baun is his versatility. You can have him rushing the passer as an edge rusher, but he can also play off-ball linebacker. You can put him in a coverage. You can have him against the run. And I think that's his versatility is why he's a legit late first, early second round prospect. And the great thing about this is the Bengals need both off-ball linebackers and pass rushers, so they can really put Baun where he fits best at the next level. If I were to guess, I'd say that'd be edge rusher, but it could be off-ball linebacker. Pick 34. This selection was from the Jordan Love trade-up. Dolphins got this along with pick 70, and with this selection, they're going to go with Cesar Ruiz, interior offensive lineman from Michigan. In my past 2 mock drafts, I've had the Dolphins getting Cesar at pick 26, and now they get him here later. So this is certainly a win for them. In my opinion, Ruiz is the top interior offensive lineman in the class, and he is the first one off the board. There are a few different interior offensive linemen some people may think are the best. Maybe guys like Lloyd Cushenberry, probably the most popular. Some would still say Tyler Biadasz, even though his stock has plummeted these past couple months. Maybe some other sleepers like Nick Harris, Netane Muti, who I really like. But for me, it's Cesar Ruiz. I think he's the most upside of the group. While he is raw, I think he is good enough to slide in at center day one and contribute for the Dolphins. Pick 35, Justin Jefferson, wide receiver, LSU to the Lions. This is one of Detroit's 3 second-round picks now. This one was the second-rounder not involved in the Dolphins trade-up for Tua Tagovailoa. And with it, they're going to go with Jefferson. A few different receivers the Lions could look at here. Once again, I've been on the Jalen Reagor train. I would pick Jalen Reagor here. But Justin Jefferson is not a bad pick by any means. Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones are both free agents in 2021. And while I thoroughly expect the team to sign Golladay to a big extension, I don't know if we're going to say the same about Marvin Jones. So I think having Jefferson as the number 3 receiver, he can play a little bit of slot and develop him to be the number 2 receiver long-term, make him an outside receiver. I think that makes sense for the Detroit offense. Pick 36, Josh Jones, offensive tackle, Houston to the Giants. Josh Jones, has a very important combine ahead. I know the combine is important for everybody, but I think it's especially important for him because with a good combine, I think he could go top 10. With a bad combine, I think he could go early day 3, and I'm not exaggerating. He has the most to gain and the most to lose out of pretty much any prospect in this draft, and his stock right now is so rangy, it was really hard to determine where he's going to fall, but for right now, the Giants do need a tackle, and there aren't that many options. Probably a little bit too early for a guy like Lucas Niang, Ben Barch, Matthew Pert, or Sadiq Charles. So the pick will be Josh Jones coming off a good Senior Bowl. He's still extremely raw, but as I said, I think the combine will be so important for him to really determine where he ends up going. At pick 37, C.J. Henderson, cornerback, Florida, to the Los Angeles Chargers. A lot of people think C.J. Henderson should be a first-rounder. I'm included. I think he probably should. I think he has the first-round talent, but I have him falling to the second round mainly because I think he is a direct clone of Greedy Williams. We all thought Williams was going to be a first-rounder last year. I graded him as a top 10 prospect. He fell to the mid-second, and I think considering C.J. Henderson, in my opinion, is practically the same player. Good cover skills, solid ball skills, going to do well at the combine, but just not great when it comes to tackling, and some fundamental work is needed. Seems like Henderson took some plays off this year. I think he really was more so focused rather than on the season than just staying healthy for the NFL draft. And I think skipping the bowl game was perfect evidence to determine that my hypothesis was true. But nonetheless, I think C.J. Henderson easily has the cover skills and the talent to be a first-rounder. I think just after seeing how Greedy Williams fell, I think he'll be a second. I think he'll be a high second. I don't think he'll fall as late as Greedy Williams, and considering Greedy Williams had a pretty good rookie season, I think that'll be encouraging for CJ's stock. Pick 38, Damon Arnett, cornerback, Ohio State. Arnett had a really good season this year for the Buckeyes. His stock rose drastically, and for good reason. The Panthers need some more cornerback help. They could look at QB here. Maybe a guy like Jake Fromm, maybe Jacob Eason, but I think we're going to need another corner. Dante Jackson is great, but they don't have anyone next to him. James Bradbury is a free agent, so I think they're going to need to get his replacement, and they have a few choices. Jalen Johnson, Bryce Hall, Trayvon Diggs are all good options, but for right now, I do have the selection being Arnett. Pick 39, Justin Madubuike, defensive tackle, Texas A&M to the Lions. This is one of the first second-round pick involved in the Dolphins trade down. And there are a number of ways the Lions could look here. I think offensive line could be an ID here. I think interior or tackle, I expect Rick Wagner to get cut. I expect the team to not re-sign Graham Glasgow. So that opens up holes at both tackle and guard. And I think we need another guard anyway. So that opens up multiple holes on the offensive line. I think we could look at edge rusher. We don't have a lot of dynamic pass rushers. Trey Flowers is good, but I think we could use someone else. But I think we really want to put a focus on getting a defensive tackle with Ashawn Robinson being a free agent and with us cutting Snacks, I think, on Thursday. A move that I'm not opposed to because Snacks was not at his best last year. He took a massive step down, missed some games due to injury, and even so, I don't want to pay him the cap hit that he was getting, so I think that was not a bad move by the team. I think we're going to need another defensive tackle. We could look at a guy like Neville Gallimore. I think that's what a lot of people would think we would do here, but I was going with Madubuike instead. I think Madubuike has a higher upside. I think he has a little bit more talent. Sort of like C.J. Henderson, the effort wasn't perfect this year at Texas A&M, but I think just based off talent, and I think it's worth the risk for Detroit to take him. And then pick 40, one of my favorite players in this draft. I've mentioned it a few times today, Jalen Reagor, wide receiver, TCU to the Arizona Cardinals. They need a dynamic receiver. Andy Isabella was not great last year. Larry Fitzgerald's an old man. Christian Kirk is decent, and then Hakeem Butler, their fourth rounder last year, did not play due to an injury. But I'm really excited to see what he can do. But I think they need another guy, and I think that can be Jalen Reagor. Phenomenal speed. He is a dynamic playmaker. Did not have the best season this year at TCU, but it's not his fault. The QB play was absolutely atrocious. And I think he's such a dynamic athlete. He's going to put up a really good 40 time. I don't know if it'll be sub 4.3 like Henry Ruggs, but I think it'll be in the 4.33, 4.34 ballpark, if I were to guess for right now. And I think his speed, along with his good ball skills, that's why I have him ranked so high. It's just the route tree that he needs to work on. But that's something you can easily work on. My favorite type of receivers are guys who are super athletic, good ball skills, but just need to work on the route running. Sort of like DK Metcalf last year. I loved DK Metcalf coming out of Ole Miss. His big knocks were his medical concerns and his route tree. I had him as my number 6 player in the entire class, and while he fell to pick 64, he was great for Seattle this year, and having him ranked that high does not make me look too shabby at this moment. I don't think Reagor will be the 6th best player in the class, but I also think he is a steal here at 40. The common theme I have had since my first mock is Antoine Winfield Jr. going here at pick 41 to the Browns, and that's not going to change. Every single mock draft, I've had the Browns picking Winfield at 41. That's kind of ironic. That's kind of creepy at the same time. But if the Browns do pick Winfield here, man, I would be thrilled just for the meme. But I do think this is a good pick regardless. Winfield's coming off a great year this season at Minnesota. I think the only concern with him is for straight line speed, but I don't think that's as big of an issue for a safety rather than like a cornerback or something where you got to really go man-to-man on a receiver. So I think this is a very nice pick for the Browns. They could look at a guy like Kyle Duggar, who I think has a higher ceiling out of Leonard Ryan. But nonetheless, I think this is a really nice pick. And keeping with the meme, Winfield is a Brown. Pick 42, Cole Kmet, tight end Notre Dame to the Jags. Cole Kmet is my number 1 tight end in the class. I think he is super well-rounded. The Jaguars need a tight end, and I think Kmet would be a pretty nice selection. They get their choice out of anyone in the class. Pick 43, Jalen Johnson, cornerback Utah. Johnson was super productive this year at Utah. I think he's one of the most underrated corners in this class, and he kind of gets screwed because of how deep it is. I think he'd really be talked about as a legit late first, early second round pick had this cornerback class not been so deep. And I think this is a great pick for the Bears. They just cut Prince Amukamara the other day, and they need someone next to Kyle Fuller. Pick 44, Julian Okwara, edge rusher Notre Dame to the Colts. They're missing a dynamic pass rusher. I think their best one is probably Jabal Sheard, who is getting up there in age. He's not that special to begin with. And Julian Okwara is the type of prospect I like. Production isn't always there, but you know the talent is. He's going to test well at the combine, and I think this is really, really good value for the Colts. Pick 45, J.K. all day. J.K. Dobbins, running back, Ohio State, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They could go with Dobbins or Taylor. I have them picking J.K. Dobbins. I think he will have an immediate impact year 1. I think him and Ronald Jones can be a really nice tandem in that Buccaneer backfield. And I think that can open up so much more, not only for their run game, but also for their pass game. Yeah, J.K. Dobbins isn't a phenomenal receiver out of the backfield. That's his big weakness. And he himself as a receiver is not opening up the pass game. But having to worry about him as a runner, I think will get teams not just game planning around the dynamic duo of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and also focusing on the Bucs' run game. Pick 46, Trayvon Diggs, cornerback, Alabama, To the Broncos, Diggs is a very physical corner. Really nice season this year at Alabama. I've seen his stock dip a little bit, but I think this is really good value for a Broncos team who needs another corner. Bryce Callahan is good. Chris Harris is very good. But there's a good chance he's gone this offseason, and the Broncos need to replace him. While Diggs isn't necessarily a full-on slot corner like Chris Harris, I do think this is still a really good pick regardless. Pick 47, Bryce Hall, cornerback, Virginia, to the Atlanta Falcons. Hall is coming off an injury this season at Virginia, but he is first-round talent. And it's not an injury that I think will really alter his career, so I don't know why he's really slipping on so many draft boards. I just don't get it. This is a great pick for the Falcons. They need another corner. Bryce Hall was super good in the past, super good when he played this year before the injury, and this is an absolute steal for Atlanta. Pick 48, Brandon Ayuk, wide receiver, Arizona State, to the Jets. Ayuk is a very well-rounded receiver. I think he's going to test pretty well at the Combine. Good season this year at Arizona State, and the Jets need another receiver. They don't have a clear number one guy. Robbie Anderson, probably their most talented receiver on the roster. He is likely gone this offseason, and they don't really have anyone else on the outside. Quincy Enunwa is always getting hurt left and right. Jamison Crowder is more of a slot guy. And while I don't think Ayuk is a full-on outside guy, I don't think he definitely does not have the body of like a T. Higgins, doesn't have the physicality of a guy like T. Higgins. I think Ayuk can be a really, really solid selection for the Jets. And I could see him really raising his stock with a good combine. I don't know about first round, but maybe late first, early second if he tests well next weekend. Pick 49. This is the Steelers' first selection. I have them going with Curtis Weaver, edge rusher from Boise State. Weaver has been Mr. Production with the Broncos. And the thing with the Steelers is they got TJ Watt on one side, who was debatably the best defensive player in football last year. I mean, TJ Watt was absolutely phenomenal for the Steelers. You're going to have to pay him this offseason. I expect him to get the big bucks. But on the other side, it's more of a question mark. They got Bud Dupree, a former first-round pick, a couple of years ago out of Kentucky. Dupree has looked like a bust, but last year, he actually played rather well in a contract season. He really bumped his value a lot, and he made himself a ton of money. But the question is, do the Steelers want to bring him back? And I don't know if they do. I think they want to save money because they know they're going to have to break the bank for TJ Watt. And maybe they let Bud Dupree go. I mean, Dupree hasn't been great with the Steelers really outside of last season. And it might be risky to really invest a long-term contract in him. So I think getting Curtis Weaver to replace Bud Dupree makes a ton of sense for them. Pick 50, Netane Muti, interior offensive lineman, Fresno State, to the Bears. I love this kid. Phenomenal at Fresno State, can get a little bit over-aggressive, can get a little bit antsy with the hands. But other than that, this dude is an absolute stud, and with Kyle Long retiring, the Bears need to replace him, and Muti right now is my interior offensive lineman number 2 in this class, behind Cesar Ruiz, over guys like Lloyd Cushenberry and Matt Hennessy, Nick Harris, who I do really like Nick Harris. And I think teams will realize how underrated of a prospect Muti is. And I think this will be a great pick for the Bears. Pick 51, Cameron Dantzler, cornerback, Mississippi State, to Dallas. They are in need of secondary help. They have talent at corner. Jordan Lewis is okay. Chidobe Awuzie, the funnest name in football, he's solid. But next to them, they got Byron Jones. Byron has the talent of an all-pro, in my opinion. I think the Cowboys are making a mistake by letting him go. They have their big three when it comes to free agents in Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, and Byron Jones. I think they're going to pay Dak the big bucks, as they should. And I think they're going to pay Amari Cooper over Byron Jones, which I disagree with. I would personally pay Byron Jones over Amari Cooper. I think Michael Gallup has the talent to be a number 1 receiver next year. And I think the Cowboys can use this pick on a receiver, maybe a guy like Denzel Mims, Donovan Peoples-Jones. There are a few receivers they could look at here. Maybe someone like KJ Hamler. I totally forgot KJ Hamler was on the board. I think that just makes more sense for the Cowboys. But they are getting a very talented player in Cameron Dantzler, who I do really like, coming off a good Senior Bowl. I'm not saying the pick is bad. I'm just saying Dallas should probably prioritize their re-signings better. Pick 52, Darrell Taylor, edge rusher, Tennessee to the Rams. He's a big combine sleeper of mine. I think he's going to test really, really well at the combine. And I have him going over edge rushers like Josh Uche, who I love, along with other guys like Bradley Ane, John Grenard, Jabari Zuniga. And the Rams need pass rushing. Dante Fowler is pretty much gone. All they really got in their front seven is Aaron Donald. And as good as Aaron Donald is, you got to get pieces around him. I guess Samson Ibukam is solid, but they don't really have a lot outside of them. Michael Brocker's probably gone. Corey Littleton probably gone as well. So I think they need some more help there, and they're going to go with the talented Tennessee edge rusher. Pick 53, this would have originally gone to the Eagles, but since they moved up for CeeDee Lamb, it belongs to the Cleveland Browns. And they're going to go with Lloyd Cushenberry, interior offensive lineman, LSU. So doubling down on getting linemen, along with, of course, Antoine Winfield Jr., as a lot of people have Cushenberry as their interior offensive lineman number one. I'm not as high on him as others, but I do think this is fair value. Lloyd is a little bit raw, but I think he has a very high ceiling, and obviously the Browns have a glaring hole at offensive line. Pick 54. This is where things get interesting. This pick belongs to the Buffalo Bills, but I have it being traded to the Baltimore Ravens in exchange for Matt Judon. So I have the Ravens franchise tagging and then trading Judon to the Buffalo Bills, and the Ravens will receive this pick. Judon is a very, very talented edge rusher. He had a great season this year for Baltimore, and he's going to get paid the big bucks. I don't think Baltimore wants to pay him the big bucks. I think they have other priorities, and it's going to be hard to really see themselves paying Judon 5 years, maybe $80 million? That's a lot of money. Maybe they do it, but I think they're going to franchise tag him and move him to Buffalo so they can get value for him. Meanwhile, for Buffalo, they're getting a phenomenal pass rusher who can help them right away. One of the better pass rushers in the NFL, probably better than anybody they'd use with this selection. And the Ravens are going to get Josh Uche. If I'm a GM, he is not available here. Uche has a lot of burst, a lot of speed coming off the edge. I think he's going to test better than most people expect at the combine. He's one of my favorite players in this class. Pick 55, Bradley Ane, edge rusher, Utah to the Falcons. Ane had a really good Senior Bowl. Falcons need some edge rushing help. They sort of get unlucky with Josh Uche going right before them, but the Ravens are lucky that he was still on the board and they were able to get good value for Judon. So the Falcons are going to have to settle for Ane. And when I say settle, Ane is still a very good prospect, but he's not as good as Uche. And maybe the Falcons wait a little bit too long for an edge rusher. Maybe picking A.J. Epinesa at 16 would be smarter, but this is not a bad alternative scenario. Pick 56. This is the other pick, in the Miami Dolphins Detroit Lions trade. So this would have originally belonged to the Dolphins. Instead, it's going to Detroit, and they're going to pick offensive tackle Lucas Niang out of TCU. Niang is very talented. The Lions are going to need another tackle. Taylor Decker only has one more year on his contract, and Rick Wagner, that is a tongue twister. Rick Wagner, I think, will get cut because of his high salary, and I think they're going to pick Niang here to be the replacement at right tackle. Now on to the final 8 picks of today's video, starting with the Texans. They get a steal in Jonathan Taylor. How he is available, I don't know. Taylor is really a great all-around back. He gives you that mix of speed, athleticism, and power. The only concerns with him are fumbles. He had an issue with that at Wisconsin, and taking harder hits with harder tacklers, that could be an issue in the pros. And then his workload. He got so many touches in his 3-year career at Wisconsin, and getting all those touches could really have beaten up his body a little bit, and he could have less of a peak than some of these other running backs. But other than that, I mean, Taylor is debatably the most talented running back in this class, and this is a phenomenal value selection for the Houston Texans. Pick 58, A.J. Terrell, cornerback Clemson to the Vikings. I don't think they can wait another round without picking a corner. We know Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman love drafting those high corners. They've had some success. They've had some fails. Trey Waynes is probably gone after this season. He's a free agent. Mackenzie Alexander is a free agent. Xavier Rhodes, even though he was not drafted in the Mike Zimmer era, He was still really good for a while, but he's not the same player. And I think their only real guys for the future are Mike Hughes, who has not been great, and then maybe Holton. Probably not Holton, though. I don't think he's a real part of their future. Nonetheless, they need another corner regardless. There are a few options they could go with. Maybe a guy like Troy Pride, big sleeper of mine. Darnay Holmes is another option. Amik Robertson is a good player, but I have them going with Terrell from Clemson, who should slide right in and probably be a starter. Pick 59, KJ Hamler, wide receiver, Penn State. This is great value. Hamler has a chance to run sub 4.3 as well. He is a speedster, dynamic playmaker for Penn State's offense. You can use him in so many ways. You can have him in the slot. You can have him running jet sweeps. You can use him as a back in the backfield every once in a while. But he is just so dynamic, and he's not going to play on the outside. He's going to be your slot receiver. I understand Tyler Lockett is more of a slot receiver, but with KJ Hamler's playmaking ability, I'm sure Seattle can find some creative ways to make it work. And Lockett can stretch the field pretty easily, so I don't think he'd be too bad as an outside receiver. He's probably just a little bit more set in stone as a slot guy. Pick 60, Denzel Mims, wide receiver, Baylor, to the Ravens. Mims is a very well-rounded player. Towards the end of the season, a lot of people projected him as I would say, 5th rounder, but I really liked him. I had him as like a early 3rd-round grade, and now after the Senior Bowl, everybody's hopping on the Denzel Mims train. And Baltimore, who focused on defense with their first 2 picks, is now going to get a big position of need in theirs in wide receiver. Get a guy across Hollywood Brown to develop, and Lamar Jackson might actually have some receiver weapons. He has tight end weapons in Mark Andrews and Hayden Hurst, but he needs a few great receivers. Pick 61, another nice value selection, Neville Gallimore, defensive tackle, Oklahoma, to the Titans. In the interior of their defensive line, they got Jarrell Casey, who's great, but getting up there in age. Jeffrey Simmons, he had a very solid rookie year, but they need someone else too. And Gallimore showed a ton of promise at Oklahoma, 150% effort every play. I think he'll test pretty well at the combine. He's a little bit older than most of these draft prospects, but I do think with age comes more early experience, and he might contribute more right off the bat. Pick 62, Bryson Hopkins, tight end, Purdue, to the Packers. There are a number of tight ends they could look here. Thaddeus Moss. They could look at a guy like Hunter Bryant. Even the Dayton kid, Adam Troutman, who has a ton of potential, not really being talked about, but I do expect him to be a day 2 pick. And even though he's coming from Dayton, a small school, I think he'll be great, but he's not the point. We're trying to talk about Hopkins here. The Packers need another tight end. Jimmy Graham is not getting any younger, so the Packers are going to double down on weapons for Rodgers and adding, obviously, T. Higgins in the 1st round, and now getting Hopkins here. Pick 63, Kyle Duggar, safety, Lenar Ryan, to the Kansas City Chiefs. Duggar's going to test really well at the combine. Has played super, super well for Lenar Ryan these past couple of seasons. And even though he's played poor competition, he's still really, really good, and I'm quite high on him. Final pick of the day, pick 64, Marlon Davidson. Defensive tackle from Auburn. He'll plug right into their interior of the defensive line. A lot of people had him as more of a mid-round pick these past couple of months, but his stock has sort of risen these past couple of weeks now that more people have done their research on him, and I think this is a pretty nice pick for Seattle and a good way to cap off this mock draft. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like button and subscribe, and as always, have a good one. Peace out.